Evolutionary.org Hardcore 2.0, episode 11. Today we're going to be talking about Pharmacom. It's a great brand. We're going to be talking about spring cutting cycles with everyone's favorite steroid, Trenbolone. So let's bring in Mobster first to talk about innovations with Pharmacom, because this is a really cool thing they have on their website where you can go on there, right, Mobster?
Absolutely, Steve. I'm kind of I'm blown away actually, and it's something I think a lot of supplement companies, sorry, steroid companies should do. Guys, when you look at a PED company, you want to know about quality. You want to know how things are produced and whatever else. What a Pharmacon gone and done is they videoed every single stage of the process. If you go to their website and you go on the innovations tab, you can literally see watch these are all short videos, guys, 2-3 minutes each, and you can literally watch an introduction. You can watch videos from the facility of the items being made. You can see the machines doing their magic. You can see the vials being filled. You can see the pills being produced. You can see how things are sterilized and how the ampoules are made. Every single aspect of that production is there for you. Steve, I know from the companies that I've been involved in the past, myself specifically for the sports supplement industry, we went to a flavoring house and we saw how whey protein was flavored. And so I've been in the lab. I've worked with quality control in a job when I used to work in a meat factory back in the day. So I know how products are tested, how they're weighed, how the powders that are involved, how it's all done, how it's produced. I even know about the buying process. So I've had that little bit of a background. I think it was 7.5 years at the factory, and the company that we run for, I think, was coming up 6-7 years, my own company. So seeing these things done in this particular way, guys, I said to Steve in the pre-show, I'm kind of excited about this because Steve and I have been around in the industry for a long time and we know how these things are produced. But a lot of our new listeners don't. So you go, how is it made? What's the quality control like? What's the production process? This is not kitchen sink stuff. This is not literally, made in a lockup somewhere in North London. This is a company showing you the machines that they use, the processes involved, and the production. And anytime you want to assure yourself, you can click on one of these videos and look and see what happens, see the actual manufacturing process. That's the kind of innovation that I like, Steve. I think to me, this is seriously something that all companies should do. But right now, I mean, Steve, they got the stuff here talking about how much money that they had to invest in the company right at the beginning. Where do you see that kind of information on any other pharma company like this company, Steve? Where?
It's like a real pharmaceutical company that's publicly traded. They release their earnings report. They release all their information. They're very transparent. Well, it's the same thing with this. They're very transparent. You're not dealing with a dealer out of your gym who's brewing this stuff, as Mobster said, out of his toilet, out of his bathtub, in his trailer in the middle of nowhere. And at the same time, he's also on recreational drugs. He's getting high. He's smoking crack and he's producing meth and all this other stuff. That happens. That's
Yeah,
where a lot of steroids in America come from.
seen
And
it.
when you buy it from a buddy at the gym, that's what happens. So this is a legitimate pharmaceutical quality product here. This is legitimate brand. So, I mean, you've got to give them a lot of credit for being so transparent and basically show. It's like going to a restaurant and watching them cook the food in
Yeah,
front of you. Isn't that better than having them in some dirty kitchen out back cooking your food where you can't see what the heck is going on? I mean, it's very important, and a lot of people love this. I love those restaurants. I don't eat out at restaurants really ever, but if I am going to eat at a restaurant, I definitely would like to see the way they're making my food. I want to make sure the guy's not like wiping his butt and then touching my food. Well, this is the same thing with this. So this is really cool. And these are actual scientists, actual chemists that are making these products. They're not some goofball, all right, who thinks he's smart, who's making recreational drugs and then making steroids. So this stuff is legit. And it is. We love Pharmacom. It's a great brand.
I love that. I'll tell you something else, Steve. You and I both know this. from being around the game for a long, long ass time, right? There are only 2 or 3 companies, and I'm including Pharmacom on that list right now, where the stuff is produced by that company. Even going back to my analogy with the supplement company that I talked about earlier on, the amount of companies, myself included, Steve, we didn't produce the stuff in house. To do that is a big, big investment just for single batches of protein powder. You have to do it like a ton at a time, Steve, 1,000 kilos at a time. That's 2,200 pounds at a time, guys, for one flavor. Otherwise, it's just not economical. Now, any of you guys that go on other forums will see other companies sponsored, and there are, for every 90 companies that are on forums, for every 100 companies, 90 aren't producing their own products. Same thing applies in the supplement industry, Steve. There's like 1 or 2 really, really big companies in the UK, 3, maybe 10 in America, who are producing nearly all the other products for the other companies. This company is telling you, they literally said how much they invested and how many products. They had 4 products when they started. They've now had 40. On their site is just their products. What you see on their site, they produced, and they've got videos of them producing it. They're not a company that's buying in brands or sourcing their material from other pharmaceutical companies. They are producing in-house, in their own facilities, with videos for you to watch that process happen. Most companies, you can go online and look this kind of stuff up, guys, for how pharmaceutical products are done. And this applies, you go in your local supermarket, Steve, and buy a generic version of aspirin. It's going to be produced by a massive, massive pharmaceutical company. It's not being produced in the supermarket's own pharmaceutical facilities. And these supermarkets are massive billion-dollar companies, and they're not producing anything. It's nearly all done under contract. And the same applies to the PED industry. This company is not doing that. This company is producing their own products for you to look at and see how it's being produced right there, right in front of you, with their historical background and how long it's taken them to get there. And that's just in their introduction, Steve. Never mind the different things that they need, other innovations. And one of the videos, it says here, Steve, I'll read it out to you. Briefly describe several advantages you get by using their products. In other words, that video is just saying, this is what we do it, this is how we do it, this is why we do it, this is why you should trust our product. That, to me, is exactly how it should be done. There's only in our industry, Steve, in the PED industry, 4 or 5 companies that are anything close to this kind of level and producing in-house and not sourcing material from outside, just producing it for themselves, by themselves, and showing you how it's done. That, to me, is exactly how it should be done, Steve. Back to you.
When it comes to Trenbolone, Trenbolone is a very strong steroid. It is not for beginners. So we're going to talk about all the Trenbolones. In this one, we're going to go over what to stack Trenbolone with, the cycles we like. We're going to talk about the pharma mixes. Those are really cool that they have when it comes to Tren, that they already have for you. So you can just buy the mix and it's already a cycle put together for you. But when it comes to Trenbolone, dirty Tren can make you very sick. Dirty Tren can make your Tren cough very, very dangerous. Dirty Tren can cause major lipid issues, okay, and even lead to a stroke down the line. All right, so it's very important when you're using Trenbolone or any steroid, but especially with Trenbolone, that you're using clean Trenbolone. So this is why Pharmacom Trenbolone is one of the brands that I personally trust for myself and my clients. So spring, what happens in spring? For most of you out there, Northern Hemisphere, starts warming up. You want to look good. Now it's time to get rid of your coats and your sweaters and your jackets. And it's time to change into t-shirts, and going shirtless, going to the beach, looking good. We want to show off our body, work hard for our body. We want to show off that 6-pack. We want to show off that 8-pack. So in the spring, it's very important to cut down for a lot of us out there, right? So we want to cut, and Tren is a great steroid to cut. So Mobster, talk a little bit about spring.
I'm just thinking here, Steve, and I've talked about this before, as you know, the best time for you guys to cut is in line with nature. Now, where Stevesmi lives is kind of warm all the time. Where I am right now, Steve, we got snow this weekend, but spring's coming. And when spring comes, it is that much easier to cut. than it is in the winter. You're fighting against your body trying to hold on to body fat. But why do we do it in the spring, Steve? Because we're animals and the birds are tweeting, and we want to attract females. We want to attract a partner. So it's easy to get into shape in the spring. We want to get into shape in the spring. And any time now, the sun's going to start warming up and going to be out walking. And then before you know it, you're down the beach. What do we want on the beach? We want a six-pack. We want pecs are popping. We want definition and separation between the muscles. We're not talking about competition cycles here, Steve. We're just talking about looking good, to put it crudely, for the ladies. Now, here's the thing, Steve, and I think this is what we want to discuss right now. The trend options that Pharmacom's got, guys, the list is quite ridiculous. And I mean that in a really, really good way. And here's another thing, guys, and we just talked about innovations. People ask for Ampoules, Steve. They've got Ampoules, they got vials, they got different kinds of trend. Let me look while I'm talking to you right now, Steve. I'm looking at the page. Nine different trend options just on this one single page, and half of those are Ampoules. So you old school, and I'm old school. I remember at Ampoules, we used to have to score the glass and break it. People like that. And these guys have Ampoules. They have different trend options. They've got a trend base, not all in water. A Tren A100, Steve. A Tren A100 in Ampoules. A Pharmacom E200, Trenbolone in Amphate. The options just go on, guys. So, I mean, listen, I'm not a user of Tren. I will put my hands up to say that. But for you Tren fanboys, the options here for you to use Tren, there's 9 options just of in-house produced, own label Tren in different forms with different amounts. 9. Just one company product, 9. And now, what we're going to talk about today, of course, Steve knows, is a Tren summer, a Tren spring cutting stack from Pharmacom. So this is going to be your first choice, guys. So you come on there, you listen to what we're going to say now. I'm going to let Steve run with this. But you have 9 options to start your summer cutting stacking. And then we're going to throw in what else we think that we would personally choose from the options. So, Steve, discuss the Tren options in detail for the listeners.
So let me give you the first 2, and then Mobster, you give the next 2, and we'll go over to each of the 9 so people understand exactly what they're getting. And then we're also going to talk about the pharma mixes that have Tren included, as I mentioned earlier. So those are going to be really fun if you just want to take a blend, get a blend. This way you don't have to mix the steroids on your own. Some people like that simplicity. So the first one, which is really cool, you don't see this much, is the Pharmatren 50 base. So it's water suspension. It's not oil. This, why would you use this? This one is undetectable if you get tested for steroid use. So if you're an athlete that you're tested, this is going to be pretty much undetectable. Okay. It's going to be in and out of your system in the matter of hours. So this is one that you would take before the gym. Okay. And this is one that you're going to take if you're a tested athlete. So if you want to experience a sharp Tren effect pre-workout, this is what you would take because it's got no ester attached to it. So it's going to peak very, very quickly and be out of your system. So you want to take this before your workout as a pre-workout. Really, really cool stuff. Or you want to take it on a daily basis if you're a tested athlete. This way, if they call you in to get tested, by the time you get there and you get tested a day or 2 later, it's going to be out of your system. So you're going to hopefully test clean. Okay. So, but they are getting very sophisticated on the way they test people. But this is your best option if you want to take Tren and not get busted. The second one, Pharmatren A100. This is in a vial. And this is Trenbolone acetate, 100 milligrams per milliliter. Pretty self-explanatory on that. This one is good if you want to run a 5, 6, 7 week cycle. The Tren Ace is going to be in your system a lot quicker, peaking a lot quicker. It's also going to be out of your system quicker. So if you want to do a quick short cycle, in, out, hello, goodbye, great option for you. And then I'll do the third one, which is which is Ampoules, as you mentioned, Mobster, Pharmatren A. So if you want the only difference between the vial and the amps is just the way the vial, you just snap the top off and draw with a needle. The amps, you have to pop it off. So really, some people like the whole pop off thing. It just depends on what you like to do. So Some people really would rather get the ampoules instead of the. So those are the first three. So Mobster, why don't you touch on that and then get into the next three on here?
Do you know what I think it is with the ampule, Steve? And I did say earlier on, it was old school. I'll tell you what it is, right? And this is, I understand the logic, guys. So if a company produces ampules, how much more likely are they to be a professional company producing the solid ass products? That's the logic, Steve. So basically, there are a million companies out there producing product. We know that, right? And the logic goes, if you are going to the degree of work that's involved in creating a ampule, you're not going to be skimping on product. You're not going to be substituting it with something else because it is an expensive and difficult process. I and you right now could buy the kit to produce vials and have it in our house. This is when we talk about kitchen sink stuff like we talked about earlier on. A company that is producing multiple products in different forms, including ampules, is a serious company. And that's the logic of the guys. They say, if you're using an ampule, it's going to be what it's supposed to be. It's not going to pretend to be something else. On the choices of Tren, Steve, here's one that I'm looking at, which is a Pharmacom 200. Now, why? This, I think, wouldn't be my personal choice. I'd actually go with one of the ones you've already mentioned, just because it's a shorter acting ester. And if you're a newbie, that one would be for me. It's in and out 1.5 days, guys. It's very, very short half-life. That's the Trenace. And it's that particular choice of you're new to the game and you've not used Tren before. That would be my personal choice, Steve, because we know that it's only going to be in my system. I'm going to struggle with Tren, with the usual Tren side effects. I want something that's in and out of my system quick. Now, if I'm experienced, here's what I would go with a Pharma-free Tren 200. And it's Trenbolone acetate, same as what I've just mentioned. Trenbolone enanthate has 50 milligrams of the acetate, 100 milligrams of the enanthate. And don't ask me to pronounce the next one, Steve. It's a bit of a mouthful. Hexyhydrobenzyl carbonate, 50 milligrams. This, for me, Steve, is one of those ones that you experience, you Tren lovers who are familiar with the side effects, who are already, it has to be said here, Steve, especially when it comes to Tren, I want you guys to be lean-ish already, maybe not summer cut ready, but kind of edging towards that when you're using the Tren, because you will manage it better, but especially if you've some experience, because this has got that combination of short, medium, and longer acting esters, and you will know how to manage the side effects. And so therefore, that's a good choice for me right there, Steve. What else have we got? Guys, you've said they got the ampules. You can have it in a vial or you can have ampoules for both those items. There's the Pharmatren H100, hexyl, again, hydrobenzyl carbonate as a 100, as a 200. The ampoules as 100 or 200. So again, 100% when it comes to the Tren, Steve, choices. Choices for the newbie, choices for the experienced, choices for those competing. But we're talking about summer cutting here, guys. So for me, what would I be looking at here, Steve? If I had experience, I would choose the one I've already chosen, purely and simply because I know how to manage it. I'm ready to rock and roll. It's going to be our second and third choices when it comes to what orals we'd add and what injectables we'd add, because we're looking to guarantee success. As always, and I'll say this again, Steve, I reiterate something I've said on many podcasts before, do not let the PEDs do the work. You must kick ass in the gym. You must do your cardio. You must be on point with your diet, because then with these options that we're giving you, with Pharmacom behind you, you are trying to get as best as close as possible to a guaranteed success. So let's look at the injectables and the orals that we would choose with these Tren, Steve.
Yeah, so let's talk about my favorite orals to stack with Tren. Now, everybody's going to be different, okay? Everyone's going to have a different opinion on this, but me, I like to stack more mild orals with Tren. I like my Tren to do the bulk of the work when it comes to androgens on the cycle, especially when it comes to cutting. I find that it's much easier to cut when you're running a mild oral with Tren versus something that's more harsh. So I wouldn't run anything like Anadrol or D-bol or even Superdrol with Tren. It's just too much. You've got, number one, the water retention to worry about with the D-bol, and then you got the side effects to worry about with the Anadrol and Superdrol. So I like to run it, Mobster, more conservative. So I like to run Anavar. Exandrolones is what they have on Pharmacom. They have two options. They have a 25 milligram and they have a 10 milligram. So it just depends on you know, how much you want to do. So anything from 30 to 50 milligrams of Anavar, oxandrolone would be really, really good. I know that a lot of people too, they like to run Proviron. So they do have a Proviron option. It's called Provironos, and it's 1 blister, 50 pills. And I like this one too. Proviron isn't going to do much on its own. But on when you stack it with Tren, it's going to give you a little more hardness, a little more vascularity. It's not liver toxic like other oral steroids. I really like it as well, Mobster. It's a really good one to add if you don't want to add side effects to your cycle. So you can run anywhere from 150, 200 of Tren up to 400 milligrams at the max. But if you want to keep side effects low, 300 or 350 max. It just depends on how much of Tren you want to tolerate. And you can go ahead and stack either one of those orals. Those are two of my favorite things to run with Tren. Also, I love T-Bol as well. But Mobster, I know you love T-Bol. Why don't you talk a little bit about stacking T-Bol and Winstrol with Tren? How would you do it?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know that I'm a fan of T-Bol, Steve. And funny enough, I haven't actually used it, and this is really bizarre, guys. And I'll tell you for why. Because we're talking about a cutting cycle here, Steve. So why we're not talking about gaining muscle. I want you guys to have done all the work you're supposed to have done in the winter time with the compounds, getting big, getting strong. What we're talking about is stripping away the body fat. So what does T-Bol do? T-Bol and Anavar, which I'll talk about in a minute, Steve, you're not looking about adding loads of mass. I would say 5 pounds on cycle. And you've got a couple of options here, like Steve says. All of the rules, I think, have the same option, Steve, which is a 10 milligram or 25 milligram. And in this case, I'd actually choose the 25 milligram option. And I've discussed T-Bol before. T-Bol was developed in East Germany for the East German Olympic and athletic athletes. So that's all the various games that they do before they go to the Olympic Games, as well as the Olympic Games. And it was designed specifically at that time to avoid the testing. And the big thing that they really did, and which is where it works for us in a cutting cycle, is you didn't bulk up like a motherfucker. You didn't suddenly turn up looking, if you was a man, and a woman actually, sorry, Steve, and this is what was happening, guys, at that time. Look up your history, double check what I'm saying. The women did not look like women, and the guys would go away and do a cycle of whatever the hell they would be given as vitamins by the East German scientists, and they would come back and they'd have bulked up 20, 30 pounds. And so the testers went absolutely crazy. Olympic bosses went crazy, and they got tested. And of course, eventually the test got up, and people started to get caught out. So the East Germans got crafty. They were backed up by the Russians, and they wanted their athletes to kick ass, get gold medals, but not be so blatantly, obviously bulked up, looking like guys if they were women, and so on and so forth. What do we do now, of course, is that we don't abuse it. And we're looking, like I said, I think on this, a moderate stack, and that's, I would agree with Steve again. I would keep my trend between 200 and 300. Some of you guys will want to run more. That's entirely on you. This is my personal choice. And I would probably look at something like 1 to 2 pills, so 25 to 50 milligrams a day, Steve, of the Trenbolone, and just gain a few pounds of lean muscle tissue, increase my nitrogen retention while I'm cleaning up my diet, while I'm increasing my cardio. So it's real simple. Guys, trust me on this. When it comes to any of the stacks we're about to suggest, none of them are crazy dosages, and none of them are overly complicated, because it doesn't need to be complicated. If you're doing the work with Pharmacom products, doing the rest, that's all you need. We keep this stuff real simple. My second choice, Steve, and I'll jump in there and do this now, would be Anavar. Now, guys, if I'm a fan of Turinabol, I'm definitely a fan of Anavar. I'm using Anavar right now, Steve. And for me, an Anavar is a great way to hold onto your strength, which is where it works for me as a strength athlete. But specifically, again, guys, this is something that happens, and I want to touch on this very quickly, Steve. With cutting cycles, if you run it the wrong way, you lose, and this is what people do sometimes, Steve. They fuck the diet up and they lose a ton of muscle that they work really hard for. I want to hold on to my muscle tissue and a ton of strength, which makes that losing that muscle tissue that much easier to lose. I don't want to do either of those things. I want to stay as strong as I possibly can and hold on to as much muscle as I can while I'm stripping away the fat. And that's the reason why we will talk about products like Pharmacom's Anavar. And again, 10 and 25 milligram options. Here's how I run the Anavar. Dead simple. I'm doing this exactly right now, Steve. 25 milligrams in the morning, 25 milligrams in the evening. And what are we talking about on the Tren? My choice of Tren, because much was said earlier on, was a combination. 2 jabs a week, Steve. 150 to 200 milligrams maximum for the jabs. And 2 pills, as I said, 1 Avo in the morning, 1 Avo in the afternoon. Now, if you want to mix that up with a T-bowl for a double whammy, go ahead, guys. But again, real simple. You could do a simple oral and a simple injectable, exactly as I described. Or if you want to go for the double whammy, the T-bowl and the Anavar together, Steve, and the Tren again. And that's a real simple, nice little cutting cycle with products from Pharmacom that's going to produce what you want. The tissue retention, the strength retention to hold on to the tissue that you work really hard for while you're stripping away the fat, while your muscles are starting to pop. How long would I run any of this for, Steve? As it's a spring cutting cycle, 8 weeks. You could run it a little bit longer, especially when it comes to the trend. But again, as I said to you guys, if you're new to this, it's about mitigating or managing the side effects. The VAR pumps at the higher doses are a pain. You don't really get any of that on the Tyranobol. But trend sweats are a pain because they just are. It doesn't matter where you source the trend. Some of you guys are going to struggle. So for me, and like I said with Steve as well, I agree with him. The lower dosage works for me better in managing the side effects. It would work for me again in terms of keeping the cycle short. And here's another thing, guys, and something else you can do. You can consider this as well, Steve. There's just enough time while we're recording this podcast to run it for 8 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, come off, do a full P-City, and then come on just as you creep into the summer proper. Where you live, Steve, I know you're going to have that late season. It's more August and September. Trying to think of my months there, Steve. And so therefore it's a double whammy. How would you like to be in condition for 6 months? How do you want your abs popping for 6 months, guys? All that work that you're doing, all the time in the gym and looking good for as much of the year as possible before those clothes and the hoodies and you have to get wrapped up again for the winter time. We want to show everybody that work that we've been doing and have that muscles popping. Hell, Steve, I'm getting ready to go to my short sleeve, my shirt sleeves right now. Let everybody see my magnificent arms. What about you?
Of course, buddy. I mean, we want to look. I like to look good year round. You never know, especially if you're single. If you're single, you never know. You might run into a beautiful woman. She's going to be attracted to you. That it's really important, a beautiful woman or a beautiful man, because that tells them that you care about yourself, that you care about your body. So you want to look good. So it's really important to look good year round, but especially in the spring when you're wearing less clothes, you're going to be exposed. You want to always have a lean body. So when it comes to injectables now, it's different than orals because orals, you can run shorter cycles. Orals are in and out of your system quicker. Injectables are in your system longer. So on these cycles, on orals, Mobster talked a little bit about it. You could do 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. Okay. You can run Tren and an oral in 5 to 8 weeks. Boom, in and out, done. When it comes to injectables, you may want to run it a little longer. So, for me, I like to do, when it comes to injectables, what my body wants. So remember, I said this, very, very important, because this is where people on forums and on social media, they get into arguments and debates because they think what works for them is going to work for other people. But let me give you the truth. The truth is everybody's going to react different, especially when it comes to Tren. Some of you are going to run Tren and you're going to just shred up like crazy on it. Some of you are going to run Tren and you're going to shred up when you run another steroid with it. And you're going to figure out which steroids work good for you, which steroids don't. Mobster loves Anavar.
Yeah.
That's one of his favorite. But you may run Anavar with Tren and not get results. So when it comes to injectables, it's even more pronounced because injectables, you have a lot of different options. They do a lot of different things and they're much slower in the body. They're slower to reach peak. They're slower to leave the body. So it's more pronounced, the results you can get when it comes to injectables because of that. And you're going to be running cycles that are longer, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks. Some even go to 16 weeks. So I don't recommend running Tren longer than 8 weeks, 10 weeks max, but you can run the Tren to finish the cycle. You can run the Tren to start the cycle and then have an injectable with it. So there's a lot of different options with this. It all boils down to what works for you. Now, the first stack, this is probably one of the more popular stacks out there, Mobster, is Tren with testosterone. So Pharmacom, they have so many different testosterone options. Hopefully we'll get into it on a future podcast. But
Yeah.
my gosh, they have everything you could possibly imagine when it comes to testosterone. All kinds of testosterone esters, all kinds of testosterone options, amps and vials, whatever. It boils down to, how do you react to testosterone? Now, some of you out there, you run tests, you end up wet in water retention, you end up getting bloated. You don't really like the way you react to testosterone. Some of you run tests and you shred up on testosterone. Everybody's different. So it depends on if this stack is right for you. How do you react to testosterone with Trenbolone? Okay. Do you react good with testosterone by itself and are able to cut on it? Or do you use testosterone more of a bulk, appetite increaser, gaining size, gaining a lot of strength? So if that's the case, then don't stack testosterone with Tren, stack something else with Tren. So it just depends. Now, some of you out there are going to react incredibly well when you run Tren with tests, and some of you aren't. So you have to figure out how you react to these compounds. This is why Tren Mobster, I tell people, save it for when you are advanced. As tempting as it is to run, I would never recommend you run Tren unless you have at least 5 cycles under your belt. And then Tren is a good option. This way, you know how your body reacts to other compounds before you add Tren. So that's cycle 1, using testosterone with Tren. Mobster, tell us another cycle. Tell us your thoughts on that and another cycle you like, injectable-wise.
I'll jump right back in here for a second here, Steve. Guys, I mentioned this earlier on. You want to kind of half be in shape already, even though we're talking about a cutting cycle for Tren to get the best. If you're fat, I'm going to be crude here, guys. If you're fat as fuck, don't use Tren. You want to kind of half be in shape. You want to be kind of just on the cusp of having those abs popping. I mean, just. And then you're using the PEDs here that we're suggesting to go the rest of the way. Because if you are fat, you're really going to struggle. I've mentioned this before, guys, on other podcasts. My strength athlete buddies views tend to become crazy strong. But the sweats, the insomnia, the quote unquote trensomnia, the problems. So you want to be kind of lean to get the best out of it. Fantastic drug, obviously, for getting into shape, Steve. When it comes to the test, no DECA and no SUS. Why? DECA maybe, but SUS definitely not. Why? Because we've talked about this on other podcasts, Steve. My appetite, especially on SUS and on Steve. And we're talking about cutting here, guys. The last thing I want you to do is for me to suggest a drug that makes you want to eat everything in the fridge, then everything in the freezer, and then go for a night raid on the supermarket and grab some donuts. I do not want my appetite going for the roof. If anything, Steve, I want to go in the other direction. And actually, funny enough, Tren actually helps a little bit with that. Your appetite should not go crazy. So that's another reason why that's our base here for a cutting cycle for Pharmacom. What would I use instead, Steve? I would probably go for something a little bit shorter active. Now, I've mentioned this before. I never got on with it, but my strength buddies absolutely loved it. And that's a testing Ampoules. Super popular, easy to do. Steve, I counted while you was talking. They have 18 different kinds of testosterone that we can choose from. That's just testosterone, guys. So again, a nice, easy, dead simple, straightforward Pharmatest E300 testosterone in Ampoules. Dead simple, straight. So if you guys, like I said, my buddy's absolutely raved about this, Steve. If you like it, you know that you can work with it. It's dead easy. It's going to be, again, for my strength buddies, they was holding on to strength, and I've touched on it earlier on. You want something that's going to hold on to all that muscle that you've gained, not drop that. It's going to keep your strength up. And I said, if you get on with it, like Steve said earlier on with that, when we talked about experience, if you know, this is why we always talk about real simple cycles when you first start getting into shape, you first start using PEDs. We keep it real simple so that we know what works for us. I know that for me personally, I never really I've been using exactly the same product as my buddies. We were using the same source from the same company, the same whatever, Steve. And I was always like, meh. But my mates absolutely raved about it. So let's say that I'm an outlier, Steve, and that my buddies were the rest of the guys. That means 90% of you will get something from an Ampoules. And Pharmacom has options again, Stevie. I'm looking at 2 options right here, 3 options right in front of me. It's Pharmatest E300, which would probably be my personal choice if I was using it. A Pharmatest E250 Ampoules and a Pharmatest E500. I would probably go, my personal choice, 100% would be the Pharmatest E300, Steve. Nice and simple, straightforward, mixing that with the Tren. And I would have said we could give you a second option here, guys. But that is a real simple cycle again. What would I be looking at with an Ampoules? Again, I think 2 jabs a week, Steve. Same as before. And you know what? I would probably run 300 milligrams of the Tren and 300 milligrams of the Enanthate. Real simple. Now, I know that it's real popular to recommend crazy amounts for doing absolutely crazy things, but you're not, most of us, including myself, we're not freaks of nature. We're normal guys with some muscle. The majority of our listeners are going to be sub 200 pounds, and they just want to look good and get into shape. So keep it real simple, guys. It's easy to manage. It's easy to mitigate. It's short acting enough that it's not in your system for years. But some of the products we could talk about with Cyprian Steve, 16 to 20 days. If you don't like it, you've got another 2 weeks to go. So I want something that's medium in terms of its action, moderate in terms of the amount, so I can manage the side effects. And again, guys, you're going to be hungry. And sometimes being hungry because you're on a diet and you're trying to get into shape, you're doing your cardio, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be tired. I don't want to be dealing with silly amounts of side effects. So I want a quality product like I'm going to get from my Pharmacom, moderate amounts to run. And again, guys, let's say that this cycle, Steve, is successful, those two words together, then I can do it again middle of summer and look amazing right going up into the autumn. So with my shirt's still off, my abs are still popping, I'm wearing a vest as long as possible. I don't know about you, Steve. And Steve said about staying in shape all year round. I've talked about this, just a little analogy here, guys. I don't want my heavy clothing to go back on to the last possible day, just as it starts to get cold enough. I'm still wearing shorts, Steve, as long as it's possible. I want to be with a short sleeve vest for as long as possible, with short sleeves for as long as possible. And if I'm in super ripped shape, guys, which I'm not because I'm more of a strength athlete, but if that's my thing, I want this to last as long as possible. So that's another reason why I like short cycles over longer cycles, because I can have time off, I can get full recovery, and then I can run my Pharmatest D300 again, Steve, in 16 weeks. 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, and then back in again, Steve. So I can run it. And that gets me right up to the same, right up to the full, right, as long as possible, in shape, looking good, and hitting it, Steve. Back to you.
The next one I want to talk about is running Master On with Tren. Now, you want to talk about the one steroid that's universally used. I don't care if you're a top pro bodybuilder. I don't care if you're competing in physique competition. I don't care if you're in the 140-pound class, you're lightweight or you're heavyweight. I don't care what you are. As long as you're going on stage and you want to show off your body, you want to show off a cut, for spring, Master On is the number one, because it's a great hardener. It's going to dry you out. It's going to make those abs pop. It's going to make those muscles cut. All right. So using it with Tren is like peanut butter and jelly. It just goes great together. All right. So with Pharmacom, you've got so many different options. Of course, it's going to be listed as drostanolone, and they've got the propionate, they have the enanthate, and they also have a mix of both propionate and enanthate. So if you wanted to have the best of both worlds, you can go with both. But the difference is propionate, shorter ester, enanthate, longer ester. It's going to boil down in simple terms, but it doesn't have to be. But in simple terms, it's going to be how long you want to run this. So I really would like you guys to have experience with Master On already. And then this way you would know, hey, I can run the propionate. I'm okay doing more frequent injections, because with propionate, you're going to have to inject it every day, every other day. Okay. So with the enanthate, twice a week is more than enough with the enanthate. So it's really going to boil down to that. If you want to mix it in with Tren, you can match the ester. So if you're doing the Master On propionate, you match in the Trenbolone acetate. If you're doing the Master On enanthate, you can match the Trenbolone and enanthate. And if you're doing a mix of both esters, you can do a mix of both esters when it comes to Tren as well. So you can do the Tri-Tren blend, which is a mix of acetate, enanthate, and hex. So really, you don't have to do it like that, but that just keeps it simple, because you can mix the oils in the same syringe when you inject. So it cuts down on injections doing it that way. So it's a really a good idea to mix in the oils together, and that will kind of save you from having post-injection pain. It can cut down on the Tren cough if and when that does happen. Usually with Tren cycles with me, if I'm using a clean Tren like this, Tren cough might happen once or twice during my cycle. If it keeps happening over and over with Pharmacom, then that tells me your injection technique needs to be improved. You need to basically avoid injecting near a vein, and that will cut down on tren cough a lot. Also, mixing the tren with the Masteron in this situation would also help cut down on the cough, tren cough. So here, basically, the reason these two stack great together is because they're very, very opposites. So Trenbolone, it's a very androgenic steroid. It can be used solo. You can have tremendous results using it solo. Masteron, running it solo ain't going to do much for you. You might get a little harder. That's about it. But it's a straight DHT derivative, doesn't aromatize. It doesn't cause any type of androgenic effects, very, very little androgenic effects, but it's just a straight DHT derivative. So it really, really stacks good with Trenbolone when it comes to cutting, because neither one of these steroids are going to aromatize an estrogen. So you're not going to get water retention from estrogen. You might get some inflammation from the tren, but that's not the same thing, you see. So stacking Masteron with it is really good. So if you want to cut in the spring, this is a great cycle. The way I would run it, it's your first time using it, and this is something you can change, in the future, but I recommend for the first time, run the tren 250 milligrams, run the Masteron 400, 500 milligrams. So that would be a really, really good stack. That's per week, and that would be a good way to do your first tren and Masteron cycle. But it's a great one. If you start getting into tren, it's an absolute must for spring cutting, stacking these two together. Mobster, what's your next injectable stack with tren you like? All right, so let me finish up with two more good injectables you can use for spring cutting with tren. So Primobolan, again, it's a DHT derivative. It's more mild than most steroids out there, but it's not going to be as strong when it comes to hardening and cutting as Masteron will be. But it does it in a different way, because Primobolan is one of those, it's not going to give you side effects. So it's a very mild steroid, and it's not going to be so pronounced. So if you aren't quite ready to do tren and Masteron, but you've run Primo in the past and you really, really like it, guys, in the golden age, love Primobolan. Primobolan is a good option. 500, 600 milligrams of Primobolan and a low amount of Trenbolone. That would be a good mild stack if you want to keep side effects to a minimum. And then the other one, if you're into cardio, if you want to really, really focus on cardio, Equipoise is a great option. Now with the Equipoise, I'd go a little lower on the Equipoise than the Primo. I go more 400 to 500 instead of 5 to 6, because on the Equipoise, that's kind of the sweet spot when it comes to cardio, 300, 400 milligrams. So you could up it a little bit, and it would help save your cardio when you're on tren, because tren absolutely destroys your cardio. So that's a fair warning for those of you who have never used tren before. Completely normal to run tren and have your cardio absolutely destroyed. But you need to do some cardio, okay, on cycle or off cycle. Really every day as human beings. It's in our DNA to do some type of cardio, okay?
Yeah.
So if you can give me 10 or 15 minutes of cardio on tren, even if it's a brisk walk, that I would really, really appreciate that. And it will keep your heart somewhat strong, because tren absolutely destroys cardio. It's very inflammatory in the body. It's very hard to breathe on Trenbolone when you're working up a sweat and you're doing a jog. So don't overdo the cardio, because you don't want to dehydrate yourself and you don't want to cause yourself to get nauseous. But at the same time, give me some cardio. So Equipoise is a good option if you're a more cardio-based cutter and you'd like to do a lot of cardio. So that would be a good option for you going that route. So Mobster, there's a bunch of mixes. So let me kind of go through the list and I'll let you kind of touch on each of them. So we talked about the Pharma 3 Tren Blend mix already, which is a mix of trends. Then there's also a Pharma Mix 2, which is Tren Ace, Masteron Probe, and Testosterone Probe. And then there is a Pharma Mix 3, which is Test E, which you talked about earlier, plus DECA, plus Tren E. Now this one I wouldn't recommend for cutting, because DECA really, really does a number on your appetite. So I don't recommend that one for cutting, but that is an option for those of you who do like to use that cut. And testosterone too might not be a good cutter either. And then there's a Pharma Mix 5, Test plus Tren plus Winnie, all bases, no ester. So that's a really, really cool one if you react good to Winstrol and testosterone. Pharma Mix 6, which is Tren E, Masteron E, and Testy. So it's pretty much the same thing as the Pharma Mix 2, but with long esters. So if you don't like injecting very much and you want to run a little longer cycle, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks maybe, that would be a good option. So Mobster touched on one of those. Is there one in particular that you like? For me, my favorite one of this bunch, Mobster, would be the Pharma Mix 2, which is the Tren Ace, Masteron Propionate, Testosterone Short Ester Propionate, because that one is a really popular one for recomping. So if you want to recomp, which is losing body fat and gaining a little muscle, that one is really popular. And it's one of the most popular blends that you will see when it comes to professional bodybuilders. They love that those three together. And we see a lot of bodybuilders who have been open about what they use. They always mention those three. So that's a really, really good one. And you can just run 8 weeks or 10 weeks and really change your physique and cut and do an amazing cut with it. So do you agree, Mobster? Is there a different blend that you like out of those blends?
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is, guys. If you don't know how to make these kind of choices, and this is the reason for this podcast, of course, have a look at what's in the products. And quite simply, we're talking about Tren as our base product, Steve, and then we're adding orals and or injectables. So do I want and there's a lot of choices here from the mixes. Trust me, guys. I don't want Tren to be in the mix as well as me using Tren. So that's out. And I've already said already, Steve, I don't want sus to be in the mix because that just absolutely, my appetite goes into overdrive. Me on sus, Steve, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, is eating a meal and thinking about another meal while I'm literally satisfying my appetite, but I'm not. My appetite is so crazy, Steve, that I am thinking about the next meal while I'm eating the meal in front of me. That's it just goes into overdrive. It's the same when I do any sort of GH derivative, Steve. I'm using MK677 right now, and if I take it too early in the day, I want to eat everything that's still got a pulse. I don't care. So I don't want anything that's got Tren in it already because I'm using Tren. That's the cutting cycle that we're talking about, and I don't use anything with sus. So easy peasy, Steve. Just the first one. Pharma Mix 100. Test P, Test C, Boulder and literally just real simple. I'll read out specifics here, guys, so you can see what the hell I'm talking about. Testosterone phenylpropionate 50 milligrams, testosterone cypionate 200 milligrams, which is a nice long-acting thing here, guys. So think about a longer cycle perhaps with this one, and Boulderon and declinate. Now, because of this cypionate, I want to moderate. That takes a little bit of a while to build up on my system, Steve. So I would actually probably choose this for a 12, 14, 16-week cycle over at the shorter cycles that we were talking about earlier on. And again, it's a question of choices. The only reason I talked about shorter cycles, A, to manage the trend, and B, because I can do another cycle before the summer's out. But if you guys want to get in shape and stay in shape and do it that way, then for me, anything with cypionate in this. So that's how we think about these things. We look at how long the ester acts for, how long it's in their system, how long it takes to build up, and so on and so forth. So nothing with sustanon, like I said, guys, nothing with Tren in it already. So for me, this is my medium option. I don't want to do 2 cycles. I live in Europe like I do, especially Northern Europe. It's going to be, they joke about it being the summer in the United Kingdom, Steve, for 1 day. That's a bit of bullshit. It's more like 8 weeks, sometimes longer. For me, this is that sort of cycle. So if you live when it's sometimes sunny, like I do, not where Steve lives, but it can be summer for most of the year, then this to me is a perfect for that one cutting cycle. It's kind of medium in terms of length with the half-lives, etc., guys. So it's Pharma Mix 1, and like I said already, test phenylpropionate 50 milligrams, test cypionate 200 milligrams, and Boulderon undeclinate 200 milligrams for a 12, 14, maybe 16 weeks. Back to you, Steve, for a moment there. I want to finish off on this.
Yeah. So earlier I said the Pharma Mix 2. I said it was Trenbolone acetate, Masteron propionate, and testosterone propionate, but it's actually testosterone phenylpropionate. I just want to correct that. I think I misspoke and said it was propionate. So it's testosterone phenylpropionate, 75 milligrams, Masteron propionate, 100 milligrams, and Trenbolone acetate, 75. So it's a total of 250. But the phenylpropionate and the propionate are kind of similar. it's a couple day half-life difference. So you should treat phenylpropionate just like you would any type of shorter ester when it comes to injection frequency. But I just wanted to correct that because I think I misspoke once and said it was propionate. So, but back to you, Mobster. Yep.
I'm gonna give you guys a bit of a tip here when it comes to ordering, and then we'll finish off with some last bits and pieces on how to pick and make choices when it comes to using Pharmacom products for cutting. Right, so guys, you're on the website, you're looking at a product. Let me use, for example, Pharmamix 300, and it has underneath the product description W1, W2, W3. What does that mean? Now, I've looked, I know what it means. They have 3 warehouses based in the US, one that serves the world, and one that's specifically based in the EU and serves the EU. Now, the one that serves the world can be the US or the EU. And if you look, you'll get green, which means they're in stock, and pink, which means they're out of stock. So, for example, Pharmamix, while I'm looking at it, and this, guys, will change. You click on the website and make sure your information's up to date. It won't be out of stock forever, just out of stock while I'm looking right now. As an option, W1, Warehouse 1, and Warehouse 2 has stock. Warehouse 3 does not have stock. So you can either choose to buy it from somewhere else and have it shipped across the world. But if it's in stock and it's near to you, that's the way that you're going to choose it, guys. So this applies to every single product on the Pharmacom website. Literally, some will be available here, some will be available there. What would I do, Steve? If I was making up a cycle, I would choose to pick from where the products I want are available from the single warehouse that was nearest to me. Quite simple. Now, if it's near to you and it's available, it'll probably be cheaper. If it's further away and it's got to come right halfway across the world, it's going to be slightly more expensive. That's a given, guys. It costs more to post, it costs more to ship. So make your choices in that particular way. Let me go back on the cutting cycle thing again. Right, choosing Tren because of the recomposition at lower dosages. Then your oral or your injectables made on the basis of how long you're going to run the cycle for. And I'll give you the piece of information I gave you earlier. It's quite simple. If they want to do shorter esters and with a shorter half-life, you can potentially run 2 cutting cycles or stay in shape for as much longer a year. If you live where Steve lives, it's 6 months of the year that you can stay in shape for. 6 months in shorts, 6 months in t-shirts. If you live where I live, it's 3 months. So my choice here in Europe, Steve, Northern Europe, would be a moderate, medium to longer cycle. But if I live where Steve was, it'd be 2 shorter cycles. So my product choices would be made on the basis of how long it's in my system, how long it takes to clear out my PCT, and then back on cycle again and staying in shape. You younger guys, especially when it comes to chasing the girls, when it comes to getting yourself a partner, when it comes to those summer hookups, it's going to be, I want to be in shape for as long as possible. So that would be 2 short cycles with a good PCT in between. For me here in Europe, plus I'm an older guy, Steve, and we don't get as long a sun as what you do, it's going to be in medium. That would be 12, 14, maybe 16 weeks. My preference is always going to be for less because I've run 16 weeks before and I just didn't like being on the 16 weeks thing. But again, that's probably because of the weather and the conditions that I'm dealing with over there. What do I like about Pharmacom? Again, innovations. Those videos are absolutely amazing, Steve, to stand there. What do I also like? How many choices just on the trend? I like the vials. I like the fact that they've got this a whole page just on mixes. I like the fact you have stock availability on screen in front of you for every single warehouse. What grabs you, Steve? What says to you, this is what I like about this? You don't get this on every other site that I've been on. And I like the fact that they have these things. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. And Pharmacom is one of my favorite brands out there for sure. And I'm really, really excited to run their cycle this spring. So if you want to do a spring cutting cycle, definitely check them out. And we gave you a lot of ideas on this cycle of how to use Tren. So, just experiment and see what your body reacts to. And, it's just everybody's so different when it comes to this. And some of you are going to like using Tren with this steroid. Some of you are going to like using Tren with that steroid. So you got to really experiment. I would highly recommend you try Tren out, stack it with something this time. And then next time, stack it with something else. And then the third time, stack it with something else again and see what you really like and then go back to it. You might end up saying, you know what, I like the first cycle the best. So then you go back to your first cycle. run the first cycle again in the future, you know? So it's all about trying what works best for you. So at the end of the day, legitimate gear, fair prices, excellent
Yes,
customer service. That's all you could
yes.
ask from these. And they are a fantastic brand. So definitely come on the forums, ask us questions, check them out on the forums. They're there. So all right. So Mobster, finish up the show. Great show, and take us to the disclaimer.
Here's what I would do, guys. I think Steve just said it. I would absolutely come on the forum and ask us about specific products. I can do proper research. I can sit there and go, this is the reason why my choices are. This is the reason why I like the milligram dosages. And again, guys, when we're doing this podcast, is for the average Joe. And the average Joe is 170 to 200 pounds. He wants to get into shape. He's between 18 and 25, maybe a little bit older, Steve. He wants to look good for the summer. So we're not talking about the freaks here. We're talking about you, the typical Pharmacom customer, why you want to get into shape. This is the reason why we recommend the products that we do. And again, we like what they're doing. We like the options, we like the videos, we like the innovations, we like all of that stuff because you can see their stuff. And again, you can see that we can help you make the right choice for you. You're a little bit out of shape, you're already in shape, you want your muscles to be harder, you want your muscles to pop, you don't want to destroy your cardio, you don't mind, you're experienced with training, you're not experienced with training. Come on, tell us about yourself, run a log. In fact, guys, review these products. Go on the website, ask us how to order, ask us questions about the warehouses and how it's done, and work with us, and we'll work with you, and we'll get you into the best shape you possibly can be for the summertime. And again, not just us, but the other moderators and reps on that site will come on and they'll help you tweak your diet, they'll help you tweak your cardio, they'll help you tweak your training because they want you to get the best results using Pharmacom products and be in the best shape of your life. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions. Ours is our view and it's based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.